We're rolling. Everyone, welcome back to the Performance Matters podcast. I'm your host, Matrixx. Along with me is Coach Myles. Today, we're having some technical issues with the mic stands, so I'm just going to acapella it over here for my singing skills. First off, this episode is brought to us by petemethnerphotography, the premier sportsographer in the Niagara region. If you want to get in touch, you can email him, petemethnerphotography@gmail.com. Support local, awesome dude, does some fantastic portraits. So if you're looking for something like that, hit him up. We'll also put his information in the caption below. All right, on with the episode. So today we chopping up some recent wins, I think, which need to be acknowledged. But then we did some asking around. We asked some people, and we're just gonna kind of chop it up from there. So first off, wins. I think it's already well known, but big shout out to our boy Grant Spada. He just got drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is fucking fantastic. Cheers to fucking Spades. Pick 212, ranked 215, so fantastic spot to be. And of course, Florida, no state taxes, so even better.
Win-win.
Yeah, big win. Let's fucking start hitting them up. What are some things we were talking about?
So we had, from talking to some of our clients, especially people who maybe have or have not had trainers before, we kind of were asking them, like, what are some questions that you would hope that we as coaches would be able to answer?
Yeah.
And then some of them as well are questions that we should be able to answer if other professionals asked us. So we compiled a bit of a list, and we also came with some things submitted from our own clientele. So less of a Q&A, but kind of similar to the one we did a couple weeks back, where we're going to bring up some of these questions and kind of just briefly detail how we might answer them, and especially for some of them, why it might be so important.
Yeah.
So one of the most basic ones that you should be able to answer, right? Programming, periodization aside, why are we doing this specific exercise? And can you clearly explain the intent behind the movement that we're doing, or every single movement on the program card?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. Like, it's never going to be perfect. I think people expect there's going to be this magic exercise, but really you have to understand the why. I think we do a great job of helping our people understand why we're doing something, whether it's athletics, whether it's body comp, whether it's, to look a certain way, to feel a certain way. These exercises and plans we put in place are simply just tools that were kind of mapped out to hopefully have some sort of process, but help them understand why we're doing something, whether it's for a certain sport, like, okay, we're hitting this specific exercise because of X, Y, Z. Like, you might do a safety bar hand-assisted Hatfield squat and say, well, why am I not back squatting? It's like, well, it takes out the balancing component. Maybe you have certain mobility issues. So we're actually able to overload a pattern compared to what you might be able to do freestanding. This will lead to X response, which will help hopefully drive the needle towards this training quality that will hopefully help transfer to whatever you're trying to do, right? So I think it is a fair question. And honestly, sometimes the answer could just be like, yeah, it's something unconventional. It's something diverse that's just going to make you more robust. Like lizard crawls or single arm dead hangs, like shit like that you've never really been exposed to, but
right.
Can certainly help, expose some weak points, and if nothing else, be creatively fun while you're also working on those smaller groups to hopefully, make you build some armor. So it doesn't have to always be this scientific answer, but there should be some sort of purpose. And sometimes it's just gonna be like, yeah, because it's fun, because it's challenging in a different way.
Right. And
that alone will yield some good, low hanging fruit.
It's funny you mentioned the crawls and the hangs. It kind of goes back a couple weeks ago when I was talking about how most athletes are not strong enough. Mm-hmm. But I said, just because I use the word strong doesn't mean I'm talking about squat, bench, deadlift.
Yeah.
I'm also talking about, like you said, like all these different crawls and different hangs. And, you look at like gymnasts in the Olympics or something, a lot of them have never lifted weight in their life and they're absolutely jacked, right?
Yeah,
so
yoked units.
Hard to argue that stuff is not going to contribute to being a stronger athlete as well. But as much as with the why, is always going to be supported by the how, right? Because you can take the same exercise and perform it 3, 4, 5 different ways: slow eccentrics, pauses, fast on purpose, high reps, maybe low reps with a heavy emphasis, right? Like, how we perform the exercise is going to be equally important sometimes to why, or actually it's gonna support the why, I guess you could say, right? So
yeah, like we just chopped it up with Coach May too, and he says the same thing, like, oh, well, I'm strong enough, right? I want to get stronger. It's like, well, strong how? Like, what do you mean by strong? In the traditional, like, I can lift this exercise, like, again, that's just a tool.
Right.
Like, unless you're a power lifter or Olympic lifter, those variations are just tools to support a bigger goal or a bigger avenue.
Right.
So it's like those things can transfer, absolutely. but strong how, right? Like, are you able to crawl with a certain amount of load or at a faster pace or more stable with a better position? Like, those are all derivatives of strong in a certain task.
Right.
Right. So I think it's, again, just kind of helping them understand, well, what do you mean by strong? What does that look like for you, or powerful, or whatever? Like, put a face to it. You know what I mean? Like, define it a little bit. So then it just makes it easier for us to get closer to the mark.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Get close to the mark. None of us really are claiming to be right. We're all just trying to be less wrong.
That's the story we always tell.
Right.
All this time.
Okay, number 2. Coming from the athletes. How does this training support my sport or position? And does a coach understand the physical and tactical demands of my sport and role versus maybe another athlete in their own different sport, or what their role is on that team?
Yeah. So I think as a strength conditioning coach or performance coach, that you're supplemental. You are in a supportive role, and our role is going to be to build capacity or build capability, not to replicate the sport itself.
Right.
So saying that, knowing the sport, you don't have to be, like, I train basketball players, volleyball players. I'm 5'7". I train rowers. I've never been in a boat with an oar in my hand, but understanding the demands, right? Every sport is an arbitrary set of rules with a certain objective, and then every player has a task, a responsibility to, complete their task to achieve a common objective. So then, what is that objective? What's your role look like? What are the tasks that you have to complete to get close to that mark? And then break that down from the mechanical aspect and the physiological aspect, the metabolic aspect, and say, okay, how can we raise the ceilings or our capability in each of those faucets? And then pick the tools and constraints, right? Your exercise selection, your variables, to then get us closer there. So understand the sport is a big plus, right? It's a big, helpful, supportive plus, especially if you really are in tune with what your athletes are going through. Is it necessary? That's like, I don't think it's a huge necessity that you're like the best of the sport, or like as a coach, like you've played the sport. That could only help. But if you can break the sport down into component parts that are relevant to your role in the training process, then absolutely, then that's how we can get us closer to the mark, if that makes sense, right? So understanding that if we're doing certain exercise, like, well, are we hammering position-specific joint angles because this is the position you're going to be in? Are we working on expression so we can load that certain joint angle up to be better expressive of the skill we do? Or are we doing different exercise that might not directly correlate to the skill you're doing, but it's going to build up capacity in some other avenue that's going to raise the tide for all ships? That's only going to make this other expression thing better, or you can do it faster against better people for a longer period of time.
Right.
So I don't think it's going to be, because again, these sport-specific people just fucking drive me nuts, but it's where do these component parts lie for you? And then can we use these different tools and modalities and programming schemes to build capability in a certain arena to then help them do that skill in their sport when it matters most. Right. Essentially.
I think it's Matt Jordan breaks it down by like primary, secondary, tertiary qualities. So if you get like, I'm sure a ton of coaches do that, but you might get a kid who's like doing like a cable or dumbbell external rotation. Like, how's this going to help me be a better volleyball player, hockey player, football player? Like directly, it's not.
Yeah.
But that's a tertiary quality that's going to make your secondary quality better. Maybe for a football player, that's your bench press, which then your primary will be your upper body explosiveness because you have to throw a punch or whatever. And now that same external rotation drill you were doing is now going to keep that volleyball player's shoulder more healthy, which now your primary thing is to smack the ball, a couple thousand times a week. So directly it's not, but it's a supportive, necessary aspect that it's like the iceberg that you can't see underneath the water. Yeah. So being able to explain that to them too. And then I like the question when it says that not only demands of my sport, but my role, because depending on the system of the team, like let's say, again, easy football example, you have a quarterback who's like a scrambler, right? A mobile quarterback who's going to tuck it and run half the time versus like a pocket passer who maybe they're going to sit in there and be that field general that stays in the pocket. Maybe you do need a lot more speed work for that Patrick Mahomes type guy versus like a Big Ben Roethlisberger back in the day who's going to sit in the pocket and just, eat that contact per se. So not only understanding like, yeah, you're a quarterback, yeah, you play football, but even then like your coach wants you to be a scrambler versus like you're actually not going to be a mobile guy. You're a stay-at-home kind of sit in the pocket, throw the ball guy. Even that might influence your programming as well. And that could go to basketball, go to hockey, whatever. Right? If you're a defenseman that's going to pinch up and get up in the rush versus be like a stay-at-home D, maybe that's going to influence the programming as well.
Yeah, I think these athletes have to understand that, yes, we can bucket them in that way. Like there's a system we can We literally work from the top down. Like, okay, like certain qualities you're chasing, your position, your role, your current level and status. But understand there are layers to this shit that you should really be a good generalist before you even that, because that's splitting hairs. Like that's very individual, which is
Totally.
a big plus. But you also have to earn the right to kind of have that kind of specialization. I'm not saying earn the
like
right.
I use Patrick Mahomes and Ben Roethlisberger as my examples.
You know what I mean? It's like we have athletes all the time that they have all these. They're all different sports or different positions, but they're also doing very similar things. Why? It's like, well, because we all tend to have the same foundational issue at times that we can easily. It's a low hanging fruit that we don't need to specialize in anything right now. You know what I mean? Like let's get these fundamental things down first. Let's learn the skills with different tempos and contraction types. Learn the skill, and then once we kind of get deeper in the weeds and see where your more individual weak points are, it's just a tool. It doesn't matter if you're a quarterback versus quarterback, D lineman or not. It's like, what if you have the same weak point? Okay, then
totally.
It's the same. It's the same system. We're trying to hammer a physiological weak link in your relative chain. You know what I mean? And again, if you're programming for bigger teams or stuff like that, then you're going to have to be a little more general. Like, okay, this is a position-specific thing, or this is the bucket we're going to put you in. Doesn't mean that's the weak link. That's your weak link individually, but we have that freedom to do that. But even so, it's an earned right.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think athletes need to understand that too. It's like, yes, those are definitely things we're considering, but are we at that level that's necessary currently? Maybe, maybe not. So let's hammer some things. Let's get deeper in the weeds, and then we'll have a better idea if we need to start splitting those hairs. Are we ready to split those hairs? Is that the low-hanging fruit? If not, let's not worry about that just yet.
Right.
To be honest,
Absolutely. Okay, next here. And it's funny because every single one of these questions probably could be a whole podcast. So we're doing our best to be concise with it. How do you develop speed, power, and strength together without overtraining? Because no matter what sport you're playing, those are probably the main three things we're chasing. Are you, as a coach, able to balance multiple physical qualities intelligently?
Yes. I would say yes. That's almost like a concurrent model.
Right. Depending on how much time you have, obviously.
Depending on how much time you have. Now, is it optimal? Maybe, maybe not. But it's possible. And there's going to be a lot of crossover.
Right.
So in season, let's use in season as the example. It's like we don't have the luxury of time and exposure to bucket these qualities on specific days, cycles, etc. So because you're managing so much chaos, we tend to program more concurrently. We're doing some dosage of sprint or speed work, some dosage of plyometric or jump work, whatever, some compound work in there as well for our strength and our force output. It's possible, but is it optimal? I think is a better question. Like, is it optimized? Probably not. Because if you're going to work on true speed, then understand that that's going to require a certain amount of dosage and a certain amount of time. That might not be a luxury. Plus, if you're balancing in-season sport, you're not going to have the ability to regenerate as much either. So the dosages will probably be lower and a little more scattered, but it can still move the needle, right? So that would be my first point. Then understand the second point is going to be that all these qualities have a different shelf life.
Right.
Speed being 5 to 8 days, power being 10 to 14, strength up towards of 21. So knowing that you have a different shelf life for everything, you can have a priority of what you want to work within concurrently.
Right. So the simple answer would be like, I can, but I don't need to, nor do I probably want to.
Exactly.
And then comes kind of what you're saying.
Exactly.
And here's why.
Yeah, I was diving down a rabbit hole there. Fuck. I was
it's good though. No, it's good. And like I would encourage you to keep going. I just was saying, like, if a kid asked me that, like that, or a parent or whoever, a coach.
Simple answer, yes.
Yes, but I probably don't want to nor need to. This is why, because again, like for most things, speed kills. Speed is the main thing. These other things support speed. So boom, then here comes the residual. It's kind of like you're saying, the shelf life.
I love people say speed kills. Speed catches. Speed catches. Strength kills.
Yeah, because especially like a lot of these, contact sports, collision sport, when you get your hands on somebody, like, then what?
Yeah, speed catches.
Then what?
Strength kills.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay, this next one could and probably one day should and maybe will be its own podcast. And there's multiple ways we could approach it, but how do you assess an athlete before programming? This is one I added in. As a coach, are you guessing? Are you using movement screens, different strength tests, performance data? How are you tracking the progress over time? And finally, as an athlete, what are my weaknesses and how are we going to look to address them? Because I feel like more and more I'm seeing these random workouts get written up on whiteboards, nothing being tracked. It's really fucking pissing me off. And people are doing athletes a disservice. So this is a question that I actually added in here.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some form of assessment, right? There needs to be some sort of baseline. So for us, when athletes come in, we'll try to do a mobility screen. First off, we'll always start with the conversation. We need to just get some basic general information, medical history, injury history. That can tell us a lot. But then we try to do some sort of movement screen. Now we try to pick things that might be more relevant to them, and we can get some good information as well. More of like predictors, like, okay, if I see someone doing like, their hip external rotation, internal rotation, with our experience, you can say, okay, you're a rower, this will probably be what we see. And sure enough, you're like, yep, that's what we see. If you're a
Ankles
golfer,
are mangled, they can't get overhead.
you're doing all sorts of things. Golfers, we know, okay, if we get this amount of degree of hip external rotation, internal rotation, we probably have a harder swing.
Right.
So you're kind of seeing those preconceived things already based on their background and their age. But you go from there and you say, okay, this is just more of like a predictor, but there should be some form of assessment in terms of what can we likely predict.
Right.
And then from those predictions, it just makes our selection a little more finite, like a little more funneled in.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So if you see...
You waste less time.
So there is some form of assessment. I think it's necessary. And then in terms of like our quantitative stuff, like your dash time, your jump metrics, or whatever VBT metrics you want to take, again, that will just help us kind of narrow the scope of like what should we be focusing on a little bit more. Or it might disregard some things. Oh, we were going to do this. We see this. Maybe we actually have to start here instead.
Right.
So is it the most important thing? No, but it can certainly save us a lot of time, like you said, and it can just kind of check off a lot of things of what we don't need to worry about, or like maybe we don't do this. It just kind of like it just disregards things that we might have had preconceived. So, okay, actually we're going to squat, but actually based on what we're seeing, we might not bilaterally do it. We might do unilateral, or like
you're strong enough. We're going to do more. Speed strength type squat. Or whatever.
What we're seeing compared to your body weight, this might be a better. We can start here instead and go from there. So it doesn't necessarily disregard the program or what you want to do. It's more just helps it be a little more funneled and a little more not specific, I guess, but a little more direct, a little more catered. That's all it is, and it saves us time doing that. And then having some baseline metrics, is going to be valuable because at least you have a starting point.
Right.
Now, do those metrics transfer? Hard to say. It depends on what you're looking at, but certain things may or may not transfer, but they can't hurt. Right, so if we see certain metrics go up, whether it be their eccentric metrics, whether they're propulsive metrics, if those things all go up, peak power, everything else, it doesn't mean they're going to be a better player, but they certainly have better physical capability to be a better player if their skill is optimized. So I think an assessment is like the fundamental thing we can do to help save us some time, be a little more direct, a little more specific in terms of what we're going to be hammering when. I think it just gives us a good overarching bird's eye view of what we're currently working with, where they're at.
Totally. The thing with assessments, again, even though they might not be perfect, but some of the concept that always fascinates me is ratios. So like I'm always fascinated by like eccentric utilization ratio or like strength deficit. Looking at ankle versus knee versus hip with like the RSIS kind of stuff, where when I'm sprinting, like what's my weak link? Do I have a big horsepower with my hip and my knee, but I'm driving with a flat tire, or is my ankle actually sufficient? Is my 10 fast but my 20 slow, or vice versa? Mm-hmm. Is my, comparing depth jump to vertical, like counter movement jump, I should say. Is my bench press weak because my overhead press is weak? Like, these are the things that can help guide the program. May not be perfect, right? Looking at Paulo Quint's, people like to shit on it. Oh, he used to have the external rotation has to be 9 or 11% or whatever, and people say, oh, it's hogwash, but it's like, well, no, it's a good guiding principle. And you know what? Like, even if it's not guaranteed down to like my incline bench is 91% of my bench or whatever, at least you can look at it and say, okay, but it should probably be pretty close to these numbers. If I can bench whatever and my incline is like 60% of that, guess what? That's probably where your weak link is at. Like, these things, whether you want to admit it or not, anybody out there, these things can help guide your programming and make us less wrong over time and waste less time.
The question I would say, I'd be like, but does your coach know what you're looking for?
Well, that's exactly kind of my point. So like the more things I'm talking about, and some of you coaches out there probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about, you might want to read a book or two, because this is some of the thought that goes into what we're doing.
It's like a lot of coaches will throw kids on force plays and everything else like that and say, oh, look, this one up. But does that matter? Like, what are you looking at? And do you know, like, if you don't know what you're looking for,
how the fuck do I fix it?
I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying you have to know, oh, I'm looking exactly this, but you should start to be able to wean things out of what does not matter,
right,
to help get a pool of things that might matter.
Right.
And if you shit on the ratios, but I'm sure the guys using the ratios know what they're looking for and why it matters.
Right.
You're only shitting on it because you don't understand.
Right.
Right. You may not be like, if you understand and you could choose why not to use it. Absolutely, you could say, no, I can appreciate ratios as an example, but here's why this doesn't matter for what we do or who we're working with. That's fine too.
Yeah.
But don't shit on it because you don't understand it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the eccentric utilization ratio can be very beneficial, absolutely. But do you know what that means?
Yeah.
And if you're seeing springy athletes that might have a more concentric base ratio compared to what you would assume be elastic, can you be able to say, well, does this really matter for this person?
Right.
Or like, should this matter for this person?
And how much training age do they have? Even Tim Karen in his own book, I can't remember the numbers, but he says something like, until the athletes have X training age and maybe squat this much times body weight and do whatever, like this whole book I've just sold you means
irrelevant.
nothing.
It's irrelevant.
He's the one that will admit it to you. Then you're like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Like you're gonna throw an eccentric utilization ratio at like a 12-year-old kid, like
No.
you're just a loser.
No, but
like once you've actually had that training age,
it sells.
Yeah.
People, like some of these coaches out there, we fucking throwing kids in force, like, oh, look at your numbers. It's like they're fucking 14 years old. It's gonna go up. Like that probably doesn't matter. Sure, do it.
Right.
But put things like help them understand like why it doesn't matter. And if you don't understand, read a fucking book and learn. Don't just be fucking selling something you don't understand.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you don't know what to look for, okay, go learn what you might be looking for, but you hopefully will understand more of what you're not looking for over time.
Right.
But don't be fucking, just because you don't understand something, that's where people start shitting on it because they don't really have a firm grasp. Or if you understand it, then you can justify why you choose not to do it.
It's unfortunate too. I feel bad because I keep seeing these remember, I don't want to say young coaches because I think I'm a young coach, but these new coaches, this industry is now like full of young coaches who are infatuated with the idea of testing metrics, which is great because you have your heart's in the right place. You want to find the issues that athletes may have, but then like they have no idea how to approach maybe solving them.
No, they just
skipped over the basic training principles. Like, you know what I mean? They can probably run a 1080 or a force play better than I can, but I'm like, cool, but then what are you doing with it? And they have no idea.
Oh, absolutely. They're a lab rat.
That's what I mean.
They're put behind a computer and said, here's how I do this test. Great.
Then how do you fix it so they get a better result next time? You have no idea.
The problem is they're looking for an answer. Mm-hmm. They're looking for a reason to point and be like, that's why X, Y, Z is not up to par.
Right.
But again, like, understand that whatever you're testing, understand if it's relevant or how relevant it might or may not be, right? And then go from there. And understand that some of the things you're testing have a certain skill component that might be a little more chaotic.
Right.
Like the vertex and approach jump, that's a skill.
Totally.
You can reduce some of the skill need, like on a force play with a counter movement jump. That's why you put hands on the hip, so it disregards arm swing. But yeah, that's simpler to learn and it's a little more standardized. But also understand that everyone has a different jump, like a different self-organized way of jumping.
Yeah.
That also matters.
And then if you as a coach change your cueing,
that changes
you
everything.
get a different force trace and a different outcome, right?
Everything. So
Totally.
it's never just like this is like they're trying to. It's naive simplicity. They're looking for a simple black and white answer that does not exist in sport performance. It's too chaotic. We're human. We're not perfect.
Right.
And so there's not going to be a simple answer. We're simply trying to get a little more narrow.
Totally.
Right. Be a little less off the mark. And we have that with patterns over time. But if you change any of those standard things, then it disregards what you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Right. So long story short, assessing, yes, understand why, more important.
So what is your approach to periodization? Do you plan long term or do you just make things up day to day?
Oh, I don't make things up day to day. We become more efficient over time. And good coaches with a lot of history and experience are constantly learning and adapting and evolving, as they should. If you're not, then you're a dinosaur and be better. I will plan typically in anywhere from like 8 to 16 weeks out. That way I have a relative objective for whatever cycle and part of the year I'm working in. And then it allows enough flexibility to adjust and pivot should things not go according to plan, or the athletes the expectations I had of certain things at a certain point in time have changed. So I'm not married to this strict, structured, printed in black and white ink thing that I'm going to have to evolve anyway. So there are systems, and again, there's a whole bunch of models we can use, but it's not always going to be perfect. So it depends on the time of year, where they are in their sport. You know, like athletes travel, they get sick, things go wrong. So you have to be adaptive to what is the thing I'm trying to achieve at this point in time, and what's the most efficient way to get there with making as few errors as possible. And you go from there, right? So it might be a concurrent style in season, because why? You can say, well, it's not perfect, no, but at least I'm able to hit these qualities in the chaos, and I can pick X amount of things I want to work on this many days out from a game and adjust accordingly, which is very common. Why we do our pro guys, right? Their games are at different times of the week and X amount of games in a week. So we would just simply count backwards and have that model. If you're in off season, you can do a little more block or undulating style. If that's, you have the flexibility, but also still be, you know, a little more diverse to adapt. So I will never plan out more than probably 16 weeks tops, right? Like there should be, it helps to, if you want to practice with an annual plan, just so you can have a schedule, which is great, and you can kind of work backwards from there. But don't be married to it. Use it as a guiding, you know, your North Star compass, if you will. But you have to be flexible to adjust your approach to meet them where they're at on the day you have them, because the life they live doesn't give a fuck about your plan.
Right.
Right? The plan is just a plan. It's a guide, right? So your job is to help them, you know, they're in the driver's seat. Your job as a passenger is to help them navigate, you know, navigate the road to get there. They might go fucking take a wrong turn and say, okay, well, you're the navigator. Help them get back closer to the mark. Okay, then you have to adjust the map, adjust the route.
Totally.
So
that's why every client that comes here, every athlete that comes here, first of all, they get a program card. Okay, so they can track the progress and know what the plan is. It's not some whiteboard boot camp type of thing.
No.
So there's a program card. On it, there's a label of this is the phase that we're currently in. And any athlete that asks me, like, A, what am I working on right now? B, what do you think is coming next? I can answer them. What I think is coming next is this. I'll let you know if it changes. And if it changes, I can tell you why it changed, whether that's from a physiological standpoint. Hey, I thought this metric was going to change this much last program. It didn't, so we're going to stick with it a little longer. Maybe it's a skill thing, right? If I have a progression of Olympic lifts, let's say, okay, I'm going to do this kind of teaching progression. You're moving a lot faster than I thought, so I'll make an adjustment, or it's not coming as naturally as I thought. We're going to be a little bit slower with it, so maybe it's a technical aspect. Maybe that's a technical aspect with sprinting, whatever it may be. But there's always at least a plan in the future of what I think we're doing next. And then if we adjust it, again, I'll let you know why we adjusted it. But there has to be a plan somewhere. Yeah,
everyone gets a program card. Like some people have the app, like we have our app, and people can track it that way. But I really prefer pen and paper for a couple of reasons. I think it's cool. You can easily see. You could write down all your thoughts, all your notes, but also it just gets you off your device. So you could actually lock in a little bit better. But keep in mind too, you know, like great examples, you have to be flexible with those things. A great example is like we had this awesome sprinter come in the other day. You have this plan on paper, and then you have to like instantly cut sets or cut certain things because the tolerance wasn't there as was predicted. Okay, we have to be able to go off the script a little bit and change the plan and be very fluid with that.
Some days in here you get the most in shape person, all of a sudden it's 100 degrees, like doesn't matter who they are, like that's going to be harder today. So maybe you have to make an adjustment.
Things change. You got to be able to be flexible to get the outputs you need on you know, meet them where they're at.
Totally.
You know what I mean? But there should be a plan in place. And funny thing is too about planning is if it's working, don't feel the need to change it.
Yeah.
That drives me fucking insane.
Yeah.
I get it. It's like some athletes
doing this or that because we're supposed to.
Because we're supposed to. It drives me fucking mad. Like I get it. Some people might get bored doing the same thing over again. Like, but if it's still
that's
working.
That's part of the assessment though.
Yeah.
If you assess me, you would know I get a little bit of called program ADHD. Like I get bored easy.
Sure.
Somebody else doesn't though.
Like I think it's like yes, me, you know, kind of help, you know, scratch that itch. But if it's working, run it back and do it again until it stops working. Like don't feel the need to keep changing fucking everything just because you want to throw more variation. Oh, this is what you thought you had to go next. Is like if the fucking 4x5 back squat is working for whatever thing you're chasing, and it keeps working. Let them keep doing it until it stops working, and then you can adjust what you need to adjust.
Yeah, and then maybe vary some of the D series.
Yeah, you can change some things, but I hate if it's working, run it back and do it again until it stops working. Like don't feel the need to always just throw everything out because okay, we're in the next cycle. This is how it's supposed to be. It's like well,
totally.
You know what I mean? Like because again, there's a whole new skill development component. They have to learn a new variation. You know, you lose a week trying to teach all those things. You know, adjust, and some adjust quicker, but point being is like, it wasn't necessary. You didn't have to do that. It was just like, you felt the need for whatever reason to just change shit.
Absolutely. The next question I'll read, but we'll kind of skip it because it's pretty much the same thing. How does this current phase of training fit into the bigger picture, and have you built in progressions across weeks, months, and seasons?
Yep.
I feel like we
already answered that. Yeah, it's like a progression could be anything. Yeah, progression could be anything. If you're doing a 4x5, let's say you're doing a 6-second negative. Next week, 4x5, 7-second negative. That's a progression. That's 1 extra second per rep. Add that up over 4 sets, 5 reps. There you go. That's a progression of some form. It doesn't have to be this massive change. Any sort of new stimuli is a progression.
I was going to say progressive over stimulus instead of just progressive overload.
There you go.
Could be, like you said, time under tension. Could be same thing, less rest, making it more dense. Could be range of motion, right? Louis Simmons used to be big on like this week I'll do the 4-board press. Next week, 3-board. 2-board, 1-board, same weight.
Different grips.
So many different things you can use. Okay, this is a good one. How do you modify a program for a beginner versus an advanced athlete? Maybe are you scaling load, volume, complexity, any or all the above?
So a lot of with novices, what I'll try to do is there's a huge skill component to learning. Again, remember, keep in mind that all exercises are simply tools by which we implement to get a certain stimulus to result in a certain adaptation. Knowing that, there's a skill component. So you have to teach the athlete the skill. So find the exercise variation or derivative that is simpler for them to grasp. So that's putting on a constraint. So I think people need to understand that certain exercises are simpler to grasp and teach within certain constraints. So if you're trying to teach someone a barbell back squat versus a body weight counter movement arms out squat to a box, the body weight arms out squat to a box has a certain constraint where now you have a external target that'll help groove the pattern so it can become internally driven in terms of feedback. So personally, like for me, I will go through a handful of simple derivatives of certain exercises or tools, and I'd like to add tempos, specifically eccentric and isometric contraction types, to help reinforce the pattern. So it can, they have to really focus on the whole movement itself at different lengths of muscle, so they have a better pattern. So I'll usually have them, I don't know if it's someone new who's whatever, let's say a goblet squat or a goblet squat to a box. You might have a 3-second negative and a 3-second pause before you help them, they stand themselves up. Right. Why? It's like, well, you're focusing on these cues. The time under tension allows you more time to focus on the cue as you go through the descent. Holding the weak position for a certain amount of time helps you reinforce what that feels like. So you have a better idea of the pattern of if you have to do it again and again and again and again. And once they feel comfortable with that, you might remove the box. You might have a barbell instead where it's a little bit more load. You might put them on a wedge, remove the wedge. So all you're doing is just picking exercise with different constraints to fit where they're at. And you can use different contraction types, tempos or what have you, right, to help reinforce that. I'm not saying just use tempos for novices, because obviously our more advanced lifters doing it too. But
just using it for a different reason.
Different reason,
yeah, totally.
Right? And then because you might say, okay, we're going to do ballistic squats now, where they know exactly where their range is, they know what every position of that movement feels like, and they can optimally express it versus get messy and lose tension, all the basics of having good form, right? They can handle that, and they know the internal feedback is just way more supreme, right? So, but they have to teach that. They have to learn that. They shouldn't need an external external cue all the time to help them get to what they're trying to get to, right? Like there are times for that. Like you might have like broad jump to a box, where they have a target which forces them to push a certain way so they can't cheat, or they have a better expression. Those are different, right? But I love it when an athlete can do an let's say it's a, I don't know, barbell back squat, banded, whatever. They can do like whatever, 3 reps. And then I won't say word, and they'll look at me and say, I felt this, did this, I need to fix this. And I'm like sitting there, yeah, that's exactly what I saw. So they're so internally grasped on what they need to feel and where that they're now very efficient. Right. Great. That's where you want to get them to. Teach them to be better movers where they can control every position. If you feel something, you can learn to control it. What you control, you can then load, make it and refine it to be more ballistic, whatever, and go from there. But if you skip all those steps, it gets messy. Right, and then you're going to reinforce bad habits, and then at what cost? Because again, these are tools to help them support whatever they're doing. They don't have to be expert and hit full range everything in a certain barbell back squat, full ass to grass. Like there's a time and place if you want, but it's not the main thing. So keep the main thing, right?
Totally. It's funny too talking about, because it says about scaling load and volume and complexity appropriately. It's kind of funny because if you have an athlete throughout their entire career, let's say, like, I'm just making this up, from grade 7 all the way till the end of their like professional career, it's funny because you're probably going to start with pretty low volume. Like people love this term, minimum effective dose, right? What's the minimum I need to actually get an adaptation with this person without overtraining them while keeping it fresh, while keeping it fun, whatever. Let's say you take somebody like Anthony Federico. If we would have started training him in grade 8, let's say, that would have been the approach. Then you get into like the later high school years and the college years, like you're training fucking hard. Like there's no doubt you're training crazy hard. And then, like, when you get into those later years of that professional career, you're probably going to have to dial it back a little bit again. Probably some more than what you were doing as that grade 8 kid. But, like, because these guys are so strong, it's such a potent stimulus every rep they do versus every rep maybe a high school kid does. They're going to probably need less total volume because every rep is so potent. Not only that, the body's more beat up. There's more mileage on it. Or even you think about, when Steve was on the podcast, Steve Messler talking about the Olympic training.
Yeah.
Their training was so intense, even with like some pretty perfect recovery protocols, they would have to oftentimes split it up into 2 or 3 a days because all that volume, like they're so advanced and their outputs are so high, it wouldn't really make sense to be able to put those all in one session. So it's kind of funny from a volume standpoint. It kind of ebbs and flows throughout the career as well.
I think people need to understand that not all outputs are created equal.
Yeah.
Right? If you have a 14-year-old track athlete go against an Olympic track athlete, and you tell them to run a 100-meter dash as hard as they can, they both will.
Right.
But that high school athlete could probably do that again much sooner and feel less beat up or
2 or 3 days later
or drained compared to the pro.
Yeah.
The pro might fucking be beat up, exhausted. Like,
give me weeks. I bet you Usain Bolt felt like shit probably for 2 weeks after that Olympics.
But again, because you have to look at the absolute. There's an absolute greater amount of force and contraction speed than the younger athlete. So because it's a bigger, more powerful engine, it takes longer to warm up and longer to recover.
Totally.
So, you know what I mean? Like, we have to consider that when we're working with more elite athletes because their outputs are greater. So it costs them more.
Costs them more. Their body has had so much more mileage put on it.
Yeah.
From training for, at that point, 20 years something, 20-something years, right?
So there's a cost to it.
Totally.
And we have to consider that. And we can't compare those, we can't compare high school athletes to college or pro for that reason because the outputs are vastly different and the dosage needed to hold on to that, it might only be like 1 to 2 sets, but those 1 or 2 sets you're doing are going to be at a higher output. And that's enough.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So I think that's actually, I'm going to say that's a really good question. Okay. How do you handle in-season training? We already went over this, so we're going to just kind of skip it. This is a good one. A little bit loaded, but it's good. How do you reduce injury risk in your programming? Like we've talked about in the past, impossible to prevent, but there's no doubt we can do some things to hopefully reduce the likelihood. Are you as a coach using sound biomechanics, progressive overload, and smart movement prep?
So again, we cannot prevent injury. I think people need to understand too that training has a risk of getting injured anyway, right?
Totally.
The question is going to be like, what's the risk of not training? So you just kind of weigh the risk of if I don't train, I feel good, but the likelihood of something going not my way, or I'm not able to hit the outputs anyway. So yeah, let's say you're a subpar athlete, you're not putting as much, your outputs are less, you're less likely to injure anyway. That's why the more elite athlete you become, the more power, the more speed, the more things you're capable of producing, you're more likely to get hurt because again, it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, there's no way you can prevent injury. The more elite you become, your likelihood goes up regardless. In training, you're doing a bunch of skills that are hard. You're learning things and putting yourself through things that are challenging. There is a risk of getting beat up from that as well, no question. However, if you're optimizing your patterns for where you are, your likelihood will go down of that risk, right? You're more capable. So you're putting yourself in different positions, loading different ways, different planes, everything else like that. You're building more tolerance in that plane. You're building more tolerance in that pattern, and you're diversifying essentially your ability to move, and such your body adapts to it. If nothing else, you're simply decreasing your likelihood of getting hurt because of how now diverse and robust you are, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But there's no way to prevent it, and there's no program that's going to prevent it. You can do certain things, like, again, you might have a recovery day or whatever like that. Those things can make you feel good,
right?
Which goes a long way as well, right? It's mentally refreshing. Your body might feel, you can move a little better for a certain amount of time. All good things. But to say, like, this is the thing that's going to bulletproof me, that's fucking way out to lunch. No fucking way.
Just marketing.
Just marketing. And understand that the hard days you do in the gym, your body is degrading before it super compensates. So after a hard day, you're going to feel beat up and sore. You're at a very risky point of getting hurt after training until you can regenerate. Right. But that's the risk, and that's also what it takes to get the reward, right? It's no different than how those guys became elite. Genetically and everything else, they worked and worked and worked. They become very efficient, very economical. They're able to produce higher outputs of force and speed. It does come at a cost, and the risk goes up. But what's the risk of not doing those things? You don't get your scholarship, you don't get paid, right. You don't get Olympic medals and everything else. There's a reason we're doing these things to compete at a very high level, but there is a risk to doing those things. We have to accept that risk and then balance out where the rewards can come from.
Excellent. So here's another one we kind of touched on, but we can go into a little bit deeper. So How do you help athletes peak for competition, and do you know how to taper training to optimize performance at the right time? So we went over this before. We talked about, can you do strength and power and speed at the same time? And we said yes, but maybe I don't want to. So maybe we can just dive a little bit more into the training residuals and kind of explain to people like knowing when certain competitions are and when we can emphasize or like remove certain training qualities that we might want to develop.
Yeah. So for tapering or peaking, understanding too that if the athletes you're working with have a very high tolerance, let's say they were training very hard 4 or 5 days a week consistently, understanding that to them, their deload in terms of frequency might be cut back to 3 because that's deloading for them versus someone who's only had like, let's say
twice a week. Three times I go, oh my God, I'm getting my ass kicked this week.
Exactly, right? So everyone's tolerance is going to be different based on how well you prepared. But all you're trying to do is simply reduce the volumes to allow more time to regenerate. So you're trying to hit that bare threshold that's going to elicit a response, but then cut it off there so you allow more time to recover. And again, because these qualities decrease at certain rates, speed being, like I said, 5 to 8, and power 10 to 14, whatever, right? And also the recovery time between, like if it's a high neural output, it might take 48 to 72 hours. Right? But again, that's assuming you hit that threshold all the time. If not, it'll take a little less time. So then you can say, okay, how many days out from a competition are we? How many weeks out from a major competition are we? Because you can't peak for every competition. It's just impractical. So you pick a handful that matter. And so, okay, for the next 10 to 14 days, we're going to simply maybe cut the volume to allow more time to regenerate and make the reps that we do get your best reps. And it should make you feel almost foaming at the mouth, like I had more to give. I just didn't have enough sets to give it. Like that's a good place to be. It means you're hitting the reps with intent. You have more in the tank to give. It's almost like you're winding them up just to let them go. Right? And that's a good spot to be. Now that's going to look like a little different for everybody. It could be cutting down certain sets. It might be decreasing certain distances. It might be transitioning from more, certain heavier RM work to more speed ballistic work. It's going to vary depending on what the outcome or the goal is. But yes, there is a way to do it. And it should be done accordingly, but it does not simply mean just not doing anything. It means being a little more intentful with what you're doing with less of it. That's all that means.
Absolutely. And it's funny too, like this is, it's interesting, like Hunter Eisenhower was talking about, he was kind of going through like his schedule of how he was preparing his guys, his basketball guys, and he was talking about, if I know we have this certain team coming up this weekend who's maybe less, let's say they're more beatable, versus later in the month I got the boys are traveling down to Houston playing against Alan Bishop and his monsters that he's created. He's like, no disrespect to that first team, but we still got to train hard that week because we can probably beat those guys even on our worst day.
Yeah.
And training hard that week will set us up better to play against Alan Bishop and the boys. Even if we still lose, we're going to be actually more fit versus if we, like you said, taper for every single game. Like by the time we get to play these real big,
teams.
Juggernaut teams,
we're
going to be weak as piss. We're not going to be in the right shape we need to be in anyway. So it's sitting down with the coach and having an honest conversation of not which games can we give up because we want to win every game, but which games could we probably win on our worst day?
Which games can we afford?
Yeah, which games can we afford and which games could we win, regardless of how we feel versus which ones are we really going to have to peak for.
And keep in mind, too, that not every athlete's going to get their minutes.
Totally.
So it's kind of like keeping in mind as well, like, well, if you're tapering, great, but how many minutes are you expected to play? Because then if you're a low-minute player, you can afford to
be sore.
You can afford to be sore and train through regardless because it doesn't really impact you the same way as your high-minute guys or girls. So it is there is a lot of thought to it, good communication to it, and a simple understanding of it does not mean do nothing. It does not mean go light and go easy because that doesn't do shit because these qualities need to have certain thresholds hit to hold on to them or if not exceed them.
Right.
It just means the reps you get should be intentful. You should allow optimal as much time as you can to recover to hit it again. And then hopefully delay how much time is needed to recover in time for the thing they're preparing for.
Exactly.
Right? It sounds simple, but there's a lot of moving parts that need to be considered, and there has to be a fundamental understanding of like, okay, I'm going to feel this way, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be okay. Right? Wrapping your head around it, like you can't say, it's going to be an easy day today. Is that going to help you or hinder you? Like maybe the rest is needed. Great. Then if you need an off day, then you will know you need an off day.
Right.
But can you afford to have an off day, or is it really going to help you? If not, then there's a reason we do game day lifts. There's a reason we have our guys lift on games days. It is literally getting them ready for the work to come like 5 or 6 hours later. Doesn't mean you kick the shit out of them. It means like we're going to hammer the qualities that you're going to have to rely on in 6 hours. Make sure we are quote unquote on, if you want to call it that, and leave feeling better than when you walked in. So you're more ready, you're awake, you're prepared. Your systems are, honed. You have more neural firing. All things are signaling that every tissue in my body is now ready for the big thing that's chaotic to come. That's all we're trying to do.
Right. They leave the gym saying like, I feel like I could do more. The more is the game tonight at 7 p.m. That is the more.
Exactly. Wind them up there. And let them go.
Exactly. So the next one could be massive. I'll try to keep it brief. I'll start with it, and maybe you can jump in on top there. But what metrics do you track and why? So again, we kind of talked about it with the assessments real quick, but trying to keep it super simple. If you see our athletes jumping on the force plates, every time they jump, there's going to be 120 different metrics that get collected. Many or most of which, what's going on over here?
It's crazy.
There's some physics going on there.
You see that?
The thing slanted to I don't know what's going on.
You see how it's pulling it?
Yeah, that's crazy.
If you guys are watching this, like I literally put a can here and a coaster, and all of a sudden it was just
like a Ouija board, yo.
It felt like a slingshot. I was like pulling it, just like pulled it back. Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, go on.
So you jump on the force plate. First things first, 120 metrics, many of which you're probably never going to need, or a lot of those metrics are kind of telling the same story. So like it's not that they're redundant, but like a lot of them will be kind of measuring the same thing. Also based on what jump we're doing. A squat jump, which means like coming from that pause position versus a counter movement versus a drop jump, we're looking at different things mattering more. Okay? So we look at the jumps and all different factors in the jumps. Then we also look at speed. We have the 30-yard turf, so using the 10 and 20 and then also comparing them will give us a lot of feedback on what the athlete might need or what their weak points may be, keeping in mind their sport as well. We look at the IMTP, which is again on the force plate, but that's when our athletes, you might see them pushing against that immovable object and we're getting their force output. The biggest things we like on there, or me personally I'll say, is the max force, the asymmetry, hoping it's kind of at least pretty close, and then how long it takes them to get there, right? If I have an O-lineman who has really good force output, or any football player, I guess, any athlete in general, but especially these contact guys, I like to kind of conceptualize it for them. I'm like, you have really good force, but it takes you 4 seconds to generate it. You're never going to be able to use it. Again, hockey, football, wrestling, whatever. You're not going to have enough time when you're in the competitive arena to use it, so maybe your max output's pretty good, your ceiling's high, but your floor is low because it takes you forever to get there. On top of that, we also have now the body composition scanner, so we can figure out, the scale doesn't tell the whole story if you weigh a certain amount of pounds or kilos on the scale, so knowing certain body comp norms for certain athletes in certain sports, certain positions, and also obviously we have the Vertec. We might do broad jump testing. Like, so these are some of the main, you can obviously add to it, obviously VBT as well. But these are some of the main things that we're tracking with our athletes and our clients.
Yeah, because there's like, again, if we're using the force plates as the example, you can't get too lost in the sauce here because there's 120 different things. How many of those things matter, or how many of those things you understand, and then, if you understand if they matter or not and why. But if you can narrow down your selection of a couple of metrics that might matter, because there's a lot of crossover, that'll be more beneficial in the long run. And then try to understand what is the transfer of this to this person's main sport or main objective of their sport or task or whatever else like that. You mentioned the in-body scan, which is great, assuming it's standardized, everyone's doing the right thing. Then we can say, okay, the weight we're gaining, is it quote unquote good? Is it quote unquote lean? Is it more fat mass? Because then you can say, okay, well, your fat mass went up, but then your jump output went up too and your speed still went up. So it's like, is that a bad thing? It's like, well, yeah, we'd prefer lean, but it's still doing, you're still doing the thing you have to do. So you're literally just like taking all these different things and cross comparing them and say, okay, does this matter? To what degree it might matter? Or if it doesn't matter, to what degree it doesn't matter?
Right.
And then going from there. So you just have to hone what if you know what you're looking for, or at least be, closer to the mark of what you're looking for. Because there's so many things you can look at. It's more just determining how relevant is what you're looking at for this person to get them where they want to get to.
Without getting too deep into it, there's metrics that will inform long-term planning, and there's metrics that will inform day-to-day adjustments as well. Right?
Yep.
Compared to you versus you, if you're like a certain percentage off of your best, maybe we're going to have a little bit of a deloaded day or an adjusted day, auto-regulated day, you might want to call it, based on what we're seeing.
Yep.
So
MRSI is a good indicator of that too.
Absolutely.
It's a good indicator.
Absolutely, because we know athletes are master
compensators.
So sometimes they will have like the same jump height, but we can see from looking at the numbers that their strategy changed to get there, and it might dictate to us that, hey, they need to have a little bit of an easier day, so we'll make adjustments accordingly. Okay, moving on. How do you build buy-in with athletes? Are you able to communicate the why, earn trust, and keep athletes engaged?
Just give a shit about your kids.
Right.
Give a shit about your people. I knew, hey, podcasting.
I know it's been leaning. Okay.
There goes that one.
That's all right.
Just give a shit about your people, right? So care about them outside of the performance realm. Because again, helping them understand why will drive how to achieve the what. If you have someone that you have a positive relation, a positive experience with, they are more likely to give everything they have to get what you want out of something.
Which will lead to a better training result.
Which will lead to better training results. So,
Ironically.
Indirectly, all those things are helping them get better regardless. But how do we do that? It's like, we just give a shit. Like, we tell our interns all the time, like, don't talk to us about programming shit until you learn people's names. Who are they? What are they about? What do they do? Like, what makes them tick? That's what helps. And then if you genuinely pour your passion to somebody, they'll pour it back in, they'll fill that cup.
Totally.
Like, that's how we build, I assume how we build a really good culture is because I think we generally give a shit about everyone that comes to our door. We care so much about helping them get to where they want to get to. And that oozes out of people that give a shit. If you're so focused on just your own agenda, sets and reps and have to do this, it's like, you're going to fucking lose people. They're not going to give everything they have because they can feel the fact that you don't give a shit about them as a person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy how simple and how, simple that sounds, but it really is the prime driver of a culture or a program or an atmosphere, right? Like, think of ourselves. If we were to go into like a dentist's office, you don't like the dentist, but you go and all of a sudden someone says, hey, how are you? What's your name? And they learn, it just lowers the guard.
You hate it a little less.
You hate it a little less. You know what I mean? Like, it's the most fundamental thing is that connection to other people. And again, we're here to help people, get them to where they want to get to. So how can we better help them? Give a shit about them. You know what I mean? Give a fucking shit. And the crazy part is too, the culture we have people, it's like everyone starts giving a shit about each other.
Yeah, totally.
They start helping everyone stay accountable. They start asking where people have been, how they're doing. We see some awesome people, like shout out to Destiny, Marcy, Aaron, and Sandra, and Rachel. Like, they have their own little, groups going on and having like girls' nights and stuff like that. Like, that is so fucking cool.
Right.
That is the whole piece. It's like, you guys have formed some awesome connections in a positive atmosphere and you're all doing something positive for yourselves. Like, that's so fucking dope.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's that stuff.
And it's a two-sided coin because, I have an issue with, it's funny because I fully wholeheartedly support this notion and I also hate it when they say, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I 100% agree. But then, like, once they know you care, you have to know fucking something. You have to help them get their result that they came for.
The other side of that coin is you can't just
because there's too many people out there selling nonsense training and they're great guys and girls and people love them. But you're doing more harm than good, getting kids injured, not getting them the result that they needed to get where they got to go. So that's the shit that pisses me off. Because I think it's another one of these things that would be started as a good sentiment and became a cop-out.
Yes.
I'm a great guy, cool, but they didn't hire a friend, though. They got enough friends.
Yes.
They hired a strength coach or a trainer, a performance coach, whatever you want to call it, results specialist, whatever.
You still need to,
You need to then deliver on, because that's what they deserve, because that's what they signed up for. They paid not only the money, but their time and their trust. They could have went to somewhere else, right?
Yes.
So that's my caveat that I sound like I'm salty, but I have to throw it in there. Like, once they know that you care, then give them
you have to deliver.
The premium fucking experience that they deserve, right?
Yes, you should be results driven. However, creating the relationship and fostering a positive experience is going to make getting the results easier and more attainable.
It just allows you to then do your job well, but you have to be able to do your job well. And you can't do your job well if you don't know what you're doing.
You got to earn digging rights. But, so you get
once you have them, then
once you get the permit, you got to start digging. You got to start digging.
100%. The other thing I want to say real quick too, because I know we were talking about it, I think today or whenever. Part of it is us in our own endeavors training hard too.
Yeah.
I train hard. I think I train pretty hard. I do it because I love it, but also I hope that, they say whatever, don't trust a skinny chef or a broke financial advisor or whatever. Like, Jordan Shallow said it too one time on his podcast, and like same thing. Like, it's always funny if one of the kids is having like a bad rep on power clean, 100 kilos. I walk up with like flip flops and I just rip it, and I'm like, come on, get your head out of your ass and do it right. Like the look on their face changes. Oh, he does know what the fuck he's talking about.
He's backing it up.
You know what I mean? We've had interns in the past who are brilliant, and like they can barely squat the bar. I'm like, the unfortunate reality is nobody's gonna take you seriously.
Nobody, yeah.
So I think, like I said, like that's why I post my workouts online. Do I think anybody's watching them? No. But at least if somebody comes on that's never trained with me and says like, what's this guy about?
Yeah, you have a portfolio.
Oh shit, okay, like he's got some calluses on his hands and he can do a little bit of something, right?
Yeah, you should be able to be in the trenches and walk. Because again, if you're doing this, you love this shit.
Yeah, and that's the main reason I do it. Totally.
Yeah, if you love
can't
doing this
fake
shit,
it.
yeah, it's you can do 1,000 things. You can do 1,000 other things if you didn't like this shit. So if you like this shit, then you should be leading from the front and saying, yeah, I'm not. You don't have to be the most perfect at it, but you should enjoy it and be doing the things you're asking others to do.
I know what it feels like. I'm not good at sprinting. I love sprinting. It's fun. I'm not good at it. But you see me do it 2 or 3 times a week, trying to get better at it, making myself better than I was.
Exactly.
You know, when they say like, how's this half kneeling, whatever sprint's supposed to feel, or
Yeah,
like I can't say, well, what I heard from this other fast guy was no. Like I do know what it's supposed to feel like. I don't do it as well as maybe somebody, but at least I'm trying to do it.
Exactly.
You know?
You're making things less foreign to you, knowing that people coming in here, these things are foreign to them.
Yeah.
So how can you better relate? Practicing the shit you're telling them to do yourself, going through it with them. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I think we hang our hats in the fact that we'll never ask athletes or people to do something we haven't done ourselves.
Yeah. I hope you, athlete or client, will do it better than me, but I can't do it.
I hope you do it better than me.
Twist, I can do it.
Yeah. I hope you do it better than me, but it's not something I haven't done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're constantly evolving our craft. Like, I think we're setting someone with Berardi to go on the track and practice a new tool we're coming out to actually learn more about specific sprint drills for track athletes so we can broaden our own scope. But we're doing the things that we love to do that we're asking others to do, so we can better relay and help coach them to where they want to get to using those tools to do so. Very important. If you're a fucking strength conditioning coach or a coach or trainer, whatever the fuck you want to call it, that doesn't do the shit, fuck you, be better.
I think it was, just real quick, I think Jordan Shaw's example was, so it was on a podcast, it was something like, you want to know why the NFL, like, linemen would listen to me? Because I'll walk up cold, same thing, like, Jordan slides on my feet, I'll walk up cold and rip like 600 pounds on the trap bar, and then they all go, oh. Like,
fuck.
He's about that action. Like, he probably does know what the he's not doing that by accident. He does know what he's talking about. So let me listen to him.
It's crazy, like, I'll fucking demonstrate jumps. These guys fucking see me jump, like, oh shit. I'm like, yeah, I got bunnies, man. I'm 5'7", I can hop.
Right.
You know what I mean? But, so it's like, oh.
So that's the other aspect.
Then they click in, like, okay, I'm going to listen to this guy. It's
care about them,
pass the eye test.
Show them that you know how to freaking do it.
Yeah, pass the eye test. It just helps.
Real quick, because we're kind of running out of time. What's your approach to mental toughness or mindset? Are you able to create an environment that builds confidence and resilience? So it's a bit of a double-edged sword because there's people out there running people until they puke thinking that's developing mental toughness. It's not. But giving people reasonable, challenging tasks and having them make them, complete them, and then over time giving them more difficult tasks. Even talking to Steve, talking about the myelin and the plasticity of your brain. Like, yes, there is an element of mental toughness being developed. It's just not what you see online where you run till you puke and you get a boat over your head and you run down the beach and you drown yourself. It's not that.
No.
But it is increased exposures to more difficult training stimuli, I would say.
This old school mental toughness run till you puke. My response is that it's like, well, all you're doing is they're getting their ass kicked. And then all they're doing essentially is you're building on this platform like, I'm just going to show up and get my ass kicked today. Ass kicked, ass kicked, ass kicked. So I don't think you're progressing your response. You're just getting your ass kicked. You're essentially just becoming a beaten dog where it's like an abusive relationship where you're just used to getting kicked and thinking that's how it is. Like, this is just how it is. This is normalized. I'm just going to be, I'm just going to lie here like a possum and just keep getting kicked all day. It's like, no, that's not it.
Right.
I think the mental toughness thing just needs to be reframed and like, a little broader analysis here is just going to be like,
resilience.
Are you resilient to a challenge that you're currently going through? Yeah. It doesn't have to be a physical one. Like, it could simply be like, did I show up today? I had a rough night. Had some issues going on, but I still showed up. Okay. That considered is mental toughness. You didn't do anything physically crazy, but you overcame some adversity or conflict that you said you didn't want to do, but you did it anyway.
Totally.
Okay, so that is a great example. It doesn't have to be the most physical thing. It can be. It could be like, well, it's a tough thing, but it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get it, but you went through it anyway, and maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but the act of pursuing it is making you more, disciplined or more robust. That could be it, but it doesn't always have to be this. It's not a physical thing. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. It can be a simple overcoming of an obstacle. That's all it is you're overcoming some obstacle, mental, physical, or regardless, that you were fighting and went through, you pursued and persevered anyway. Great. Whether it was getting out of bed in the morning, whether it was showing up, whether it was doing an extra rep, whether it was maxing out, whether it was, doing an extra lap or something. It doesn't have to always be something. It's just, can you overcome a conflict that you're having internally and do it anyway? Can you do something regardless of what you're going through?
Totally.
That's all that is. It doesn't have to be this crazy bullshit thing.
So it is totally possible. It's just not probably what
I think it's just
a lot of people think it is, or it's misrepresented. Or
I think it's misrepresented. I think it's like dial it back a little bit and just look at, the nuts and bolts of it.
Totally. Okay, we got 3 questions left, and we got probably about 10 minutes, so
You can crush it.
let's crush it. So I think this is not necessary, but very important. What do you, as a strength coach, know about recruiting? Because we have a lot of high school kids coming through here that's their main goal, right, from a variety of different sports. And while you maybe don't need to know about it, we've had the pleasure and the honor of helping a lot of kids and mentoring them through that process. So I think that's going to be actually very important.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a recruiter. I'm not, we're not consultants in that. But we've had enough kids go to that level where we kind of understand a general concept of what they're probably going to go through and what they're looking for.
Oh, success leaves clues, right?
Yep, success leaves clues. I think first and foremost, kids looking to get recruited, I think understand that if you are the cream of the crop, and I mean across North America for any sport, coaches will typically find you first.
Right.
Let's address that. However, not everyone's gonna be the cream of the crop. And now when I say cream of the crop, like you have to be like the best in North America, like people knocking on your doors from Power 5 schools or teams. You know what I mean? If you're like middle of the pack, like high end or low end doesn't matter. If you're middle of the pack, you gotta take some ownership and some onus to start building the connections yourself in a positive and professional way and become top of mind. Right. And again, Dale Melnick is a great resource if people need anything like six-pack recruiting. Talk to her. She's done 1,000 things, especially for volleyball. But nonetheless, great source to drive some information and some resources from. But start creating those relationships and nurture them. It's not just one email, not just one phone call. You're always going to start selling this next step to make sure that you nurture that relationship with whatever coach. Learn more about the programs you're trying to get into. Learn more about their culture. Learn more about their people and how they operate, so you can have that better conversation. And then make sure you're holding yourself to a higher standard on a regular basis, right? Like they look at everything. You can't just be fucking around social media holding a beer and shit. You're gonna lose some shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and furthermore, if you're having these conversations with coaches that you're asking hundreds of thousands of American dollars for, the question is not like, what can you do for me? It's, here's how I can help you. Like here's how we over me. How can I contribute to making a more successful team, program, whatever? Right? Ask them those questions, and they'll be like a breath of fresh air. Like, oh, this kid gives a shit about what we do, and then they'll it's almost like they reverse the roles a little bit. So I think kids have to understand, like, it takes some ownership, right? It's not about what you can get, right? It's about how can you contribute, and then see after that what is going to be compensated for.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think they just have to really start reaching out early. As early as legally.
It's probably
allowed.
never too early. Yeah.
Is legally allowed. Like they may not make contact by age of 15 or 15 is a cutoff, whatever it might be, but start building those relationships, becoming top of mind, right? Like collecting film stats, learning more about the programs you're possibly pursuing, start reaching out, start hopping on calls and start, thinking about how you can have a role to contribute to the team, and then just keep nurturing that and hold yourself to a higher standard, ask better questions. You know what I mean? Like if I'm, like, hey coach, like where are some weak links in your program this year that you feel like I might be a good place to fill in? How can I help? How can I help you? Fantastic. And they'll give you some feedback, and then now you have some ammo that you can go back and say, okay, like, this is how I can solve those problems.
I've noticed you guys run this type of system. I feel like I fit well in that system. Versus like, I'm this type of player. Can you guys change your whole system around me? Like these recruiters can be like,
what's your ideal recruit look like?
Who the heck?
Like, what's your ideal recruit look like?
Yeah.
It looks like this, and this. Okay, great. Here's so I fit this, and this.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
so being able to leverage our connections that we do have, I'm trying to always be in contact with coaches from all different universities, but even just understanding how like some of the principles apply from one sport to another. Like sometimes it's as simple, and kids now like, no fault to them, but like they're like, hey, I'm gonna send this message to a coach. What do you think? And it's like, yo, coach, what's up? Like, fam, let's hear. I'm like, hey, listen, dude, please do not hit send on that. If you already sent it, please hit unsend, and let's formulate this better together, because they don't know. So it's up to us to make connections when we can, but also just to mentor them through that. They don't realize, like, hey, yeah, you're only 16 or whatever, how old you are, but you have to start representing yourself like an adult now and a commodity. And this is not, they're not even going to read this. I promise you, like, I've talked to different coaches and scouts, and they're like, we get hundreds of DMs every day. Like, we can't answer every single one. So there's a very easy weeding out process of kids who are maybe like sending these stupid messages, not addressing us by name.
Yeah.
Even hello, coach. Like, you didn't take the time to say, hey, it's Coach so-and-so from Queens versus Western, and maybe put their name in there. They're not even going to address it because they have to have a weeding out process.
There has to be. And I think, first and foremost, athletes should hold themselves to high integrity, because at the same time, if coaches are talking to us or scouts talking to us, we're not going to compromise our character to,
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to lie.
Or they'll stop coming to us.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to compromise my integrity for someone that I don't believe is the truth.
Right.
So if you demonstrate high character, high integrity, it makes it easier for us to relay that message or support you
Right.
through that. But if you're not that person or not, currently, then you have some internal things you have to work on first and foremost before you even start asking for anything.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like you have to create a sense of self that's worth investing in.
Right.
Before you start asking. Right.
Absolutely.
So.
Okay, two more good ones here. So this one's common, and it's a fair question, but it probably will make you laugh. So kids will often come to us and say, why am I not doing this so-and-so crazy program what this professional guy or girl was doing on Instagram?
Because you're not that person.
Yeah, so oftentimes the problem is young athletes don't realize a lot of these professional athletes are where they are in spite of their training, not because of it, right?
Yeah. Causation or correlation?
You look at a guy like, again, I'll just use another football example. You look at a guy like Derrick Henry, okay? Jacked, strong, big, fast, explosive. And kids will see him in the offseason doing like some of this balance stuff on the Bosu ball and jumping up and landing on a band and trying to balance himself. And they're like, why am I not doing that? I'm like, do you think he looks like that because he did those things? Or do you think he did the basic proper strength and conditioning for like 20 years and now he's so strong and beat up and those stimuli and outputs are so high, like we already discussed at length, that he probably needs to do a little bit less of that stuff now and he just needs to kind of keep moving and kind of maintain? Do you think maybe that's what, right? So a lot of time, they see this stuff on Instagram that looks sexy, that looks fancy, and it's like, why am I not doing that? And like you said, it's because you're not that person and that's not what they did to get there. Yeah. So why would you think that you need to be doing those things to get there?
You're not that guy. They didn't get their $1 million salary
right.
doing that.
Right.
They're doing that after they got their $1 million salary, right? That they're good in spite of that shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that might just be enough for them. Maybe again we could battle back and forth if we think that's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. The point is they're getting paid millions of dollars a year, regardless of that, in spite of that. And you're not that person. You're not that guy. That is elite of the elite of the elite. Not everyone's fucking the elite. I don't care what you tell yourself. Not everyone's fucking special, right? Not everyone's going to be like that genetic freak. They're the elite of the elite for a reason, right? And here's where you're at. Like, you have a certain genetic potential. Let's work with what we have here and understand that you're not him or her.
Right.
So you can't expect to do those things because it looks cool and it sells. Doesn't just because you can doesn't mean you should. You're not that person. It's really simple. It's like, okay, great. Tom Brady's doing like reaction stuff, great. But he was already winning Super Bowls before doing that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's ironic.
Doesn't matter.
The big video that surfaced last February, the week of the Super Bowl, was the Eagles doing like a very basic strength training workout. It was like high pulls, back squats, rows, bench press, whatever.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, they showed them in OTAs, Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, right? The QB, the running back, having a little squat off. Like, they got like 600 pounds on the bar. So don't get it twisted. Like, they can still do those things. Yeah. They're doing some of this other supplementary stuff that you might see that looks kind of cool.
It just doesn't look sexy, unique, right? The basics don't look sexy.
But they're still doing those things.
Yeah.
Right? Last question, loaded question. I think there's two sides to this coin, and I think it is important, but it gets misconstrued. An athlete should be able to ask you, who have you trained? And I say it's a double-sided coin because there are a lot of trainers out there who will have like a roster of some professionals, and that coach or that trainer is not actually really that smart or that intelligent, and they just kind of have some buddies who, hey, they're already at this point where it doesn't really matter what they do anymore, like we just talked about. Yeah. So now like they got this roster of people making them look better than really what they are.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes dangerous. But on the other hand, you look at a guy like, say, Ben Prentice, you look at his facility, has like 150 NHL jerseys hung on the wall, like, he knows something, okay? He's not getting lucky.
Yeah.
So I think as a coach, like, that is kind of your resume, being able to kind of, talk to a potential client and be like, hey, I've helped this many people that are in your kind of shoes with your similar goals through that process. And because I have that proven track record, like, hey, maybe that's why you should work with me.
I think that if you're going to, live on that hill, you better be prepared to die on that hill.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say, these are the guys I've trained,
yeah,
work with me because I've trained those guys, you better be willing to die on that hill if one of your athletes doesn't get to that level too.
Yeah, totally.
If you're going to lean into it, be prepared if it pushes back. That's
Totally.
fair.
Yeah.
Now, we are results driven. Track record speaks for itself. Yes. We hang our hat on that. Absolutely. If you're going to promote it and leverage it, be prepared that if it doesn't go that way, then the consequences will be just as abrupt.
Totally.
I think it just depends on the messaging. You know what I mean? You can say, yep, we got tons of jerseys on the wall. We have bricks on the wall too. Absolutely. But I would never say it's like they got there because of what we're doing. It's like,
yeah, totally.
Absolutely not.
I'm honored that this many people put their trust in me to guide them through the process.
Like, I'm glad I could play a small role that hopefully contributed to them getting where they want to get to.
Totally.
I think that's a fair statement.
And this is why I made that post last week of all the football guys.
Yeah.
And if you look closely at it, it's layered where there's high school guys, and then Spears guys, and then college commits, and then college guys, and then pros, and then guys who are retired from the pros.
Yeah.
Just kind of demonstrating, listen, like, there's levels to this shit, and we've been successful at every single level.
Yeah, like Sidney Crosby can come in here, work out for a week, and be like, "Oh, you see, he's."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the old.
Put his trust in us.
It's like the old Mr. Burns meme, like, "Hey, hit a home run, you guys skip." The guy cracks on the park. He's like, "See, I told him to do that."
Then he gets hurt next week, and we go, "Whoa, it wasn't our fault."
Yeah, it wasn't our fault. So if you're gonna live by the sword, be prepared to die by the sword too.
Totally. And that, my friends, is pretty much all the questions either we had or our clients had kind of submitted to us.
It's kind of like the why episode. Why IPC? Why train like the IPC does? Oh, that's interesting.
If you out there are training at a facility or you're not a training at a facility, and you have a coach or trainers who cannot answer these questions, you might want to take a long look in the mirror and think,
yeah,
sorry, but maybe you're not training with the right coach. Straight up.
Maybe. Slight little plug. All right, that was awesome. Guys, as always, make sure you follow us. We're on Spotify, Apple, and of course, YouTube. Any questions, send us a DM. This is the Performance Matters Podcast. We're tuning out.
Peace.